What is happening, people? Scarface Personal here, back on one of these interviews. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the wonderful Lee Judges. Lee, how you doing?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Harry. All good. All good.
Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. Thank you. Really
No
looking
problem.
forward to
No
it.
problem.
Should be a good one. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It's free to do so and it helps the channel's content grow and improve. If you're listening after on a podcast platform, don't forget to give us a follow and a 5-star review. But let's crack straight into it. So, Lee, what were your thoughts on Arsenal's season, overall? Did it represent progression, from last season in terms of you kept fighting until the very end?
Yeah, definitely. I felt we was much better this season and much better equipped this season than last season. It was just we fell a little bit short. And if I've been really honest, if you was to say what was the one thing that cost us this season, believe it or not, our home form. Losing to West Ham and Aston Villa, funny enough, two teams in claret and blue. You have a look at Manchester City, and that's obviously the yardstick you're going for. They lost 3 games this season, but they were unbeaten at home. So I think it's very, very important home form. A few draws along the way as well. Probably look at maybe Fulham at home when we was 2-1 up and they was down to 10 men. So I even look at it even in the cups this season as well. Like Liverpool at home knocks us out. And if I'll be really honest, the Bayern Munich game at home cost us. So, so all in all, it's fantastic to have taken them to the wire. But ultimately, there's always that little bit of disappointment that we didn't see at home. I did think at one time we might just do it. I did think at one time, I know a lot of my Spurs mates were panicking. But at the end, they're a very, very difficult team to chase or to fend off. So, but the disappointment was, and when you watched the cup final this week, and how poor they was in that. Why couldn't they have done that in one league game? But
yeah,
that's the thing you have to accept. And but definitely like going in the right direction. For the last couple of years, we've really pushed Manchester City, and I think this season we pushed them all the way, which is progression. And we've got to get ourselves over the line now. I know, like Spurs fans won't want to hear that, but that's what we've got to do.
Yeah, it's true.
It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a Spurs point of view, if I'm totally honest with you, I do think that you were the better team out of the two in terms of consistently performing. Defensively really, really strong. But City, just for me, they always find a way. But I think you can have no regrets overall in the season. You kept pushing, as you said, push them to the very end. That's all you can do sometimes.
No, exactly that. And that's what we did. Listen, I always gauge it when, obviously, like I've got a few close friends that are Spurs fans, and they were panicking. A couple of my mates were panicking, and I'm pretty sure like the Spurs fan base was panicking at one stage. So when you know that your rivals are panicking a little bit that it could happen, I knew that we was close. And I know like there's 2 Spurs fans out there, like ones that won't give you any credit whatsoever, same as Arsenal, and ones that will, but a few Spurs fans have come up and said exactly that. Oh, you're a very, very good side. So, we'll take that, but we've somehow got to get over the line against, a machine, and that's going to be very, very tough.
Yeah, absolutely will be. What would you say was the main reason, though, Lee, that you kind of pushed the way to the end, pushed City right to the very end, which you didn't the season before? Is it like you improved on set pieces, especially that second half of the season, or was it signing a Declan Rice? Anything in particular reason why you were really, really competitive this year?
I think all of those things, but I think the key is experience. I think that this season, I think last season we learned a lot. You could see that in the running. If you have a look at the running, going back to when it was probably 10 games to go, everybody said that Arsenal had the toughest running. And you look, where was you going to slip up? Oh, like Man United away, Tottenham away. No one really said like Aston Villa. So I think if you look back at that Aston Villa game that was in between the 2 Bayern Munich games, I think a little lack of experience how to navigate them cost us. That was from the manager as well as the players. So I feel that we've learned a lot, and I think that hopefully we'll learn a little bit more on that. But I think from like January, like I think it was 18, it might have been 19 games, won 17, drawn one, lost one. It is unbelievable not to win the league. But if we'd have won it and Manchester City had slipped up, say if City would have drawn a game, they would have lost the league by not losing since December, So it was unbelievable, really, that the two teams went head to head like that. But that's how it is. So I think that, Declan Rice is a real statement signing. He's been fantastic for us. I have to say that, but I also think like the little bit of experience of what's going through it now and everything like that. So hopefully we've got the experience now, and also which is what Spurs fans won't want to hear, and a lot of other fans won't want to hear, that this team's nowhere near in its prime yet. They're still very, very young, still growing. I think there's still a lot more to come from these players. They're only sort of 22, 23, some of them, and they're probably our better players. So they've got 3 or 4 years. If we can keep this team together, I think that we'll be all right. We'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so. It does pay me to admit it, but I think that you have a lot to look forward to. And obviously, we know the news of Pep Guardiola, potentially leaving next season. Does that excite you, Lee? The thought of, Pep Guardiola leaving City and, really opens that up if it happens.
Yeah, it does a little bit, but part of me wants him to stay because so then you can beat them. I really enjoyed the Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger sort of time when you're up against that. I think if Arsenal say don't win it next season and then Pep leaves, just say that happens, and then Arsenal win it, everybody will say, "Oh, that's because Pep's left." You know what I mean? So I want us to win it with him there, do you know what I mean? So I would love to have won it this season with Klopp and Pep there, but it wasn't to be. But yeah, I feel that if you are to win things in that, you want to beat the best and come up against the best and try and beat the best. So no, I hope that he stays, but obviously I hope that we can get the better of them. Look, Manchester City are a great team, but they've got a few players now starting to get to the other side, getting that to their best, like De Bruyne is now in his 30s, Silva. So they've got to replace those guys. Not as easy as what it was 3 or 4 years ago when they could do what they want. So it'd be very interesting what happens in the next couple of years. And with everybody sort of vying for those spots as well, it's going to be tough. I think the league will be even tougher next season. And hopefully more teams will give them a bit more of a game. I felt like last season teams were a little bit, how can I say it, like were more... a little bit frightened of them, like what they can do and all that, and hopefully that will, they were sort of beaten before they started, so hopefully we, teams will look at. I think that Man United game at the weekend has done everybody the power of good, because you can see that they are fallible and they are on their day. If you get your tactics right against them, it can happen. And to be fair, Spurs give them the best game up until Man United, if I'll be really honest, in that running.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with that. Before we get on to kind of Spurs and Ange Postecoglou, who'd be your player of the season for Arsenal?
Very, very difficult. I think we've had some real top players. Gabriel Saliba have been fantastic. Kai Havertz last part of the season, and Martin Odegaard. But I just think for his first year and the big transfer fee, no one talks about the transfer fee, and I think that's a massive compliment to Declan Rice. I just think he's been outstanding this season from the word go. So Declan Rice for me is the player of the year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that he's made a massive difference. I think Declan Rice coming in and just does a lot. It protects the defence, controls the midfield, supplies people, gets involved. As you've seen the set pieces, I think he's very, very good at that. Very key part of that. Pops up with goals. So everywhere you look, I think that he's really important.
And he only missed one half of football, which was funny enough against Spurs in that in the home game. Otherwise, he played every single game. When you think about it, midfield and how demanding it is in there, so availability is a key as well. And he's been available for every game this season. So unbelievable first season, I have to say that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's been really, really good. But Lee, what were your thoughts on Ange Postecoglou firstly, but also his first season at Spurs?
Well, first and foremost, what I was impressed with is that from Tottenham's point of view, and this, the hiring of him was that at last you got a manager that wanted to be there. I say wanted to be there, was grateful to be there. So he was going to do everything in his power to be successful. I think the other two, I'm doing you a favour, you know what I mean, which is a front, if I'll be honest. But it seemed like he really wanted to be there. It was a big job for him, and he's going to give it his best shot. And I think that he's very, very clever. He went in with a game plan of, the fans here have been starved of good football over the last couple of years. I'm only going on what my mates say the Spurs were, some of them saying it was a chore watching the games and all that. And all of a sudden, they couldn't wait to go to the next game because it was entertaining and everything like that. So very, very clever. And, made Spurs really, really competitive in that first few months of the season. Impressive, I have to say that, the worrying thing from if I was a Spurs fan is that maybe not the honeymoon period. I think that's the wrong word to say, but whether he's been a little bit sussed out and all that, how can he handle it? I loved the boldness of the game against Chelsea. But I do think that started a little bit of a downfall for him, if you know what I mean. Not just for the injuries, because it was very, very bold with what he's doing. But Chelsea should have and could have probably won that by a lot more than what they did. And I felt that he needed to just change it a little bit. Now for me, if you're going to carry on and Spurs are going to be successful, you've got to at times realise when you're playing against opponents that you can't play away. Sometimes you have to just change it a little bit. Look, Alex Ferguson was the best at doing it. Whenever he played Arsenal, he changed the formation. It doesn't mean to say that it's weak. It's just doing what's right for the football club and football team. And I honestly say, if you'd have said to me Christmas time, I remember. Because my brother's a Spurs fan, we went. He lives out in Thailand. We was out at Arsenal on the winter break, and we was out there in Thailand, and we watched Man United versus Tottenham. I see Spurs totally dominate that game, and should have won the game, if I'll be honest. It ended 2-2. And if you'd have said to me that day that Spurs will not get Champions League football, I would have said, right, how much you want on it? As much as I don't want you to get it, I just could not. So if some you've got your what's it like the Arsenal fans? Oh, they're fall off. That if one of my Arsenal mates would have said I'll guarantee you they won't get Champions League football, I'd have said I'll have a bet with you. I didn't see the fall off of Tottenham like that. But if you really look at Aston Villa and Tottenham at the end of the day, both had poor runs towards the end of the season. And that'll be a little bit of a worry for me if I was a manager, because if things don't go well for Spurs in the first few games, people will look back and go, oh, look, he's lost 5 or 6 games last season, whatever. So there'd be a little bit of pressure on him going into next season for that. But all in all, I think that his first season, he's done really well. And what he's done is he's got the Spurs fans all of a sudden wanting to go back to the stadium. I know that was difficult because Spurs have that philosophy of good football and playing good football and being entertaining. They've always had that. So I give them credit for that. So and it really now, I think the next couple of months, beginning of the season, will be very, very important for what happens with Tottenham and the manager.
Yeah, I think it'd be very key. I think the majority of the Spurs fans, would have taken 5th place come the start of the season. But I think it's as you said, we started so good, so competitive. None of us, really expected us to kind of keep like that all the way through the season. But like times you saw 4 losses in a row, 4-0 against Newcastle, 3-0 against Fulham, both defeats. You just didn't really see that coming. When got players back as well. So we're doing better when we had less players. That's a frustrating thing. But I think there will be a little bit of pressure on him. But I think that he hopefully will be given the time. But are there any individuals that stood out to you this season, Lee, that have either really improved from last season or new signings?
Well, from Tottenham's point of view, I thought the goalkeeper was very impressive until maybe I think it was Pep that sort of see a little bit of a weakness in there. But I thought he done very, very well considering it's his first season. Ngogi looks really, really good left back. I think that he was missed towards the back end of last season. Van der Ven, I thought was very good. The only thing I would say about him when I watched him against Arsenal, when obviously the Arsenal Spurs game, there was about 10 minutes from the end of that game when he made, I think it was Havertz that made a run. He got back and got it, but he was on his haunches. He was absolutely shattered up. He's going through too much work rate for a player like that. You know what I mean? Putting too much defensive work on him. I felt like he was having to make last ditch tackles in the end and all that, and he was running to the ground in that game. Held up really well, but if you was to be doing that for him week in, week out, now you've got Europa League football, I'd be a little bit concerned about that. Maybe at times Ange has just got to say, right, okay, just drop another 5 yards and we defend that a little bit better. That high line, I think, is putting a lot of pressure on him. But, done very, very well. I would say that, a lot of my Spurs, you wait till you see him and all that. I think he's a little bit weak in the air for a central defender. But, again, a very, very good signing for Spurs, yeah.
I think he's very key, Lee, in terms of, I think you're right, in terms of his recovery pace, the way we play with Andrew's system. Against Chelsea, I think one of the key reasons that, as you say, could have been more and we lost that game 4-1 in the end was that we obviously had 2 players come off that played a massive part.
Yeah.
I didn't think Chelsea were great, if I'm honest with you, but Van der Ven's kind of pace is very, very key. And every time Chelsea went forward, without him, it looked like they were going to score. So I think that he's been really impressive. But on Ange, you have to show a little bit of flexibility. It was fun against Chelsea, and I'm all for a firm believer in sticking to your ways, sticking to your system, especially as it's won. But what he's got to understand is that this is his biggest challenge of his career. Just because he won at Celtic, where it's between 2 teams, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to come to the Premier League and win straight away. You play Man City, you can't play the same way. Let's say Man City as you do Wycombe Wanderers. You have to adapt for every game, and that is the only worrying thing, I think, for our Spurs fans.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Spurs are not as good as certain teams in the league, you know what I mean? And the same for Arsenal and whatever. So you have to adapt. You have to say, right, well, you're not going to go toe to toe and play expansive football against the Manchester City, for instance, because they are going to catch you out. Like I felt in the 2 games that Spurs played against Man City, by the way, in the FA Cup game and definitely in the league game, they took it to Man City, but ultimately they're going to come off better more times than not, but then there is a philosophy, and I agree with that when people say, all right, well, put 10 men behind the ball and eventually they'll break you down anyway. So there is that fault to it. And so you think to yourself, right, we'll give it a go and all that, but sometimes I think, sometimes you have to go, right, okay, like Arsenal, for instance, like where are they good at? We've got players, for instance, Saka this season has found it difficult at times because he had 2 players on him all the time, but then comes against Spurs, ball breaks out and he's got the whole of the field to run into, happy days sort of thing, like long may that continue. So I think you've got to be a little bit aware of the opposition, and I think that's probably his only criticism. But can I dare I say it's probably his weakness, but it's also his strength as well. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's a difficult one to say. The one thing that you would say is that with Spurs, I think that if you play like that against most of the teams in the Premier League, like you have done this, is you're going to get results. But when you come up against the teams that are a little bit more, and in Europe as well, I think maybe he'll have to change. And if he does, Spurs will be a threat. I'll tell you that now. They will be a threat. If he doesn't, then, you're going to get the same sort of results that Spurs are getting now. And some Spurs fans will be happy with that. Others won't be, you know what I mean? It's like everything, isn't it? You want to see progression. You want to see things going. And then the other thing is which will put pressure on him if Arsenal continue to keep doing what they're doing. I can only speak from experience. When Spurs were better than us, when Spurs were are higher than us, for instance, it put pressure on us. You know what I mean? As a fan base, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. Don't you know what I mean? Like, got to get above Tottenham. Got to get above Arsenal. Like, you know, at this moment in time, that is not an issue now. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, for Arsenal fans, you know, we're pushing. We're looking at Manchester City and all that. Like, but it does put a little bit of pressure on you if the one team's doing better than the other. Like, you know, and I don't think there's a massive gap between Arsenal and Spurs at this moment in time. There is, but not massive. And like over the last sort of 10 years, I'd say that it's, you know, definitely, you know, how would I say it? Like, one time Tottenham been getting the better of us, and we've been getting the better of you, like, you know. So, but like over the last couple of seasons, there's been a big shift where I remember that the Spurs Arsenal game when you beat us. I'm not going to mention the score, but you beat us. There was not a lot of difference between the two teams. And like, if you'd have said to me that day, like, Arsenal kick on this much, I probably wouldn't have believed that as well. So, you know, a lot of credit to Arsenal for doing that. And Tottenham now have got a kick on again. Like, you know, they've got to do it as well.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much for that, Lee. Going back to Arsenal, what positions for you should Arsenal prioritise in the upcoming summer transfer window? Anywhere you need to add depth or improve on someone who's regular first team player?
I think I don't know how you feel about watching Spurs as well. Like, I don't know, but we seem to get loads more chances at home and miss them. And when we're away from home, we get maybe 3 or 4 chances, and we take 1 or 2. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we're more clinical away from home. So I don't know why that is. And I think, you know, I look at a lot of Arsenal games this season that we've, you know, if you go back to the defeats against West Ham and Aston Villa, we had loads of chances before they eventually scored. So I think a striker now, I don't know what striker that would be, like an out-and-out centre forward or somebody like that. I don't know. But I think we do need to just strengthen that area, whether it be a wide player that can play centre forward or just an out-and-out centre forward. I think that we'd like to be doing that. I'm pretty sure Spurs would probably say the same. Definitely a midfield player. You know, we had Thomas Partey out for too long. He's a little bit injury prone, so we need to get somebody in there and be sort of the same sort of robust sort of player as Declan Rice. And then I just think it's maybe 1 or 2 squad players, just strengthening the squad to make it like that we can compete in the cups a little bit more. I think there's a little bit of a drop off in our midfield and our wide areas when, say, Saka and Martinelli are not there. Certainly not when Martinelli's not. We've had Trossard who's come to the plate, but on that right hand side, I think we've used Saka too much. So I think if Arsenal were to sign 3 really top players, I'll be very, very happy. And as you guys know as well, like, the higher you go up, the harder that is to get those sort of players as well. Like, you know, so it'd be really interesting what we do. But whatever Mikel does, you know, you know, like, people question the Kai Havertz one. I think now people would say that that's been a success at this moment in time. You know, he by the way, he was outstanding at Tottenham's game. Absolutely brilliant.
Very good.
You know, very, very good. So, yeah, so that's where I'm probably looking at, like, you know, wide right maybe that can play centre forward as well. But they're hard to find, Harry. Like, I don't know where we can go from there. Listen, I think, like, we're going to have the money to spend big. So I would probably say 2 really big signings and a third maybe to come in. Like, no, don't forget we've got Timber to come back, but we don't know what he's going to be like. So yeah, I expect 3 big signings next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much, Lee, for that. Now, a little bit of a challenge for you here. And do the first part of it. If I said to you, obviously, I think it'd be very frustrating. But if you could only sign 1 player for Arsenal this summer, and of course, because it's 1 player, it could be realistic, unrealistic. Who would it be? So you mentioned, like, that striker area. Any strikers that stand out to you?
You know, it's a very, very difficult one. That, like, you know, where to go on. I don't think there's that many top strikers. You know, and Pepe would be the one, I suppose. Like, you know, unrealistic. But do you know what? I think if we sign someone like Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle, someone of that ilk, like, you know, Isaac at Newcastle would be the one that I would probably say if I could just sign one, it would be him, because I think he can play on the left and play in that middle as well, like, and he can be, you know, like, can score a few goals as well. So that would probably be the one. If I'd go Isaac, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to be realistic. Harry Kane from Bayern Munich might be a good one, like, you know.
Love it. No chance. Get your hands off. Can you imagine? Love it. Isak would be my one for Spurs as well. As you say, I think he's really good with both feet. I think he's good in the air. He's producing really well for Newcastle. Newcastle no longer in Europe because obviously Man United winning that FA Cup. You know, Chelsea obviously go down, but Newcastle get nothing.
A little bit that, couldn't it? To be honest,
they need to sell players. They're not going to sell Bruno Guimaraes, I don't think. So,
well, there's a buyout clause for him, isn't there? So they haven't really got a choice on that. I think it's 100 million. No. Some teams can come in and do it. So that's a realistic one. But would you want to spend 100 million pound on it? It's a top. It's a lot of money to spend on a player. People turn around and go, "Oh, you spent 100 million on Declan Rice," but Declan Rice can play two positions. You know, he can play like the box to box, or he can play the holding midfield role. So you're sort of getting 2 for 1, if you know what I'm saying. But you know, it is a lot of money. It's not my money though. So if they want to spend it, they can spend it.
No, that is true. I think sometimes, you know, as fans, we do forget that. But I'd rather it be spent on one player, like a top player like Declan Rice. If you said to me Spurs, as much as I'd want 3 or 4 players in a few different positions, if we went out there and signed a top striker and didn't really do much else, I'm not going to be that fussed if we spend the money. But there's times where, like, we spent the Bale money, for example, on 7 or 8 players, and really, you know, did any really work out? I mean, Lamella, a little bit. You know, there's nothing like that really stood out that's still here now and succeeding. So I think you better spend the money.
The only trouble with that, and I'll tell you what, you know, I hear what you're saying on that, but you've got to look at the bigger picture with Tottenham at the moment. They're going to be in the Europa League, a lot more games.
Need that.
Squad wasn't strong enough with no European football. Do you know what I mean? Not saying that, like, not going to, but like, you get a couple of injuries. You know, you're only playing 38 league games. All of a sudden, now you're playing a lot more. Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, you're going to need probably to strengthen the core of the squad. So, you know, if if Spurs just bought a centre forward and then lose a couple of midfield players, I think everybody going, well, why has he not bought a midfield player? It's a very interesting time for Tottenham in the transfer market as well, like, you know, because you've got to, I suppose, build sort of building blocks, isn't it, like, you know, and trying to get a few players in there that are going to strengthen the squad so that you can, because when you play some of those Thursday night games, you can rest your main players and still get through into group stages and whatever, but you still need a few players there. So it'd be interesting what Tottenham do. But if you spend it all on one player, I don't think Spurs are at that stage at this moment in the building blocks, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, to be honest with you. I think the depth is really important. Like, you look at fullbacks, like you mentioned Doggy earlier. If he goes out, you know, is Davies going to play there? Is Emerson going to play there? Really? You know, so depth, I think, is important. But with Arsenal, obviously ask you if you could sign one player. What about if you could only sell one player? Anyone you'd move on, maybe to raise funds or?
Do you know what? The 2 players, it pains me to say it, like, you know, because they're big favourites of mine. Is and I'm just looking at a financial point of view. It is Aaron Ramsdale and Emil Smith Rowe. And the reason I say that is that they're English, they can bring in big money, and they're not really playing that much. Do you know what I'm saying? So as much as I love them and all that, from a business point of view, they would be the 2 that I would, but I don't like saying it.
It's hard. It's hard, isn't it? You just got to think, well, the funds to be able to bring in players, but there's people that you really, really like. You know, you give it.
Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes
you have to take the harsh decision in football. I think sometimes it does come down to it. Like, I really like Richarlison personally, and I love his effort, his enthusiasm, and his passion with the fans. But at the same time, if Saudi come in and go, here's 65 million, you probably do need to take that to be able to spend that on a striker and distribute it on the squad depth. So you do have to sacrifice things like that.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Obviously, the aim for Arsenal will probably be, winning the title. But for Spurs, what should be the aim next season? Is it get back in the top four? Is it winning a trophy? Obviously, been since 2008 since he won a major trophy.
Listen, it's a difficult one. That, I think that if you're the owners, you're going to say top four. I don't care what anybody says. I think Man United won the FA Cup this weekend. They got £2 million for it. Fantastic. They've won the trophy, but I think it's over 100 million if you get to the Champions League. So it's a difficult one from that point. And I don't know how, from Spurs' point of view, if Spurs were to win a cup and come 10th in the league, I don't know if Spurs will take that or not. I don't know. I think there is that monkey on the back, like the weight on the shoulder of not winning a trophy. It's like everybody laughs about and all that, but it's not easy to win a trophy. Even with you've got Man City that are probably going to win at least one every season at this moment in time. So it's very, very difficult. You need a little bit of luck in trophies as well. If I was if I'm Tottenham, I'm looking at it and maybe saying, look, let's try and do as well as we can in the league, and probably attack the Europa League would be the one that I would look at doing, because you can pull out Manchester City like he did in a couple of early rounds, of the FA Cup, and you could be out, so the draw, you just don't know in the FA Cup, Manchester United beat Liverpool and Manchester City on the way to it. They had Coventry and Newport as well. You don't know. So listen, what would be a good season for Spurs? For me, a good season would be to see you relegated, but I don't think that's going to happen. No, I think that Spurs. With all most of my mates that I know are Spurs fans, would take a trophy over anything. I think that you would, and I think Ange would as well. But missing out on Champions League football this season, if you was to miss out on Champions League again next season, which is not going to be it's not going to be easy, as you know. I don't know if. I think that I think if you did win a cup, I think that that it would keep him in there. I think, but I think. Well, what do you think? I don't really know. Is it a trophy over Champions League? I think it's got to be.
Yeah, I think it's got to be, in terms of, we haven't won a major trophy since 2008. It's a long time, and it doesn't look good, when you're trying to attract players. And I don't know, just as a business point of view, I don't think it looks good. When's your last trophy? We get top four every year, but nothing since 2008. However, I'm not one of those fans that go, I take a trophy, even if we meant we're getting relegated. I'm not quite like that. I think the top four is really important. I think for money for the club, and it looks good, attracts players. And I think people sometimes, switch off from that, if you like. They know that, but they try to ignore it. So for me, next season's aim should be getting back in the top four and progressing in a trophy. I'm not going to sit here and go, you're probably going to win a trophy. But, for example, this year, give you a chance. Give it everything. League Cup, we went out in the first round we participated in. So round two, I think that's awful. Fulham as well on penalties. And then FA Cup, second one you feature in, round four, City. It's going to be hard, but, you go up early in both cup competitions. It's quite hard, really. For Arsenal, do you think that, obviously, focus will be on the title, but would you take, second place in an FA Cup?
No, but yes, if you know what I mean, it's funny, I think that we've got to try and win that league next season. I know, that's going to be tough, but I do think there is a thing on trophies. We had a great season this season, pushed Manchester City all the way, but probably if you'd be really honest about it, Liverpool probably had a better season. They pushed for the title and won a cup. So I do think that there is that fine line between success and getting trophies and all that. Listen, if we had the season that we had this season and we give it our best and we just fell short in the league, but we won the FA Cup, cool, I would take that. We've had that, but I do think Arsenal and under Mikel in particular have got to start. I wouldn't say take the cup competition serious because that's being arrogant and whatever, but start doing a little bit better in them. Like, as you say, out early. The last season before we went up to Manchester City, I don't know if you remember that game, and Pep played his strongest side and we played a weakened side. We lost 1-0, but it was a gallant defeat. But ultimately, why couldn't we have gone with our full strength side up there? So I do think that there is got to be a little bit of emphasis on trying to do better in the domestic cups and listen, I'm from an age where the FA Cup was massive, and I love the trips to Wembley and that. So I do feel that Arsenal have got to attack that as well. And I think that Spurs will as well. I think if Spurs were to play a weakened team in the League Cup and go out again, I don't think that would go down too well. I think that, but in saying that, we've done that in the last few years. So I don't know how we'll attack that cup. But I'm not being horrible as a fan. You want to win everything that you go into, don't you? So I think it's something that we've got to improve on as well. And be deep into these competitions. I don't know how you feel about it, but when I'm watching the semi-finals and the finals and that, even though when you go out you think, I can concentrate on the league and we've got this and that, but when you actually see the games you think, I'd like to be there. I want that to be us, so it's a difficult one, but yeah, I think that we need to start winning trophies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It eases pressure off the manager and it keeps the manager in the job. The project going, I think, for both teams. I think Mikel's done well, but obviously you don't turn around and go, you got this back in and there's no trophies to show for it. As good as you've been, that's a frustrating thing. You always want that trophy to kind of represent. But talking of trophies and competitions, we've got the new format in Europe this year, Champions League, Europa League, and Conference League, Arsenal in the Champions League, Spurs in the Europa League. What are your thoughts on the format? Because there's obviously a fair bit of criticism, but people also do quite like it.
Do you know what? I don't know how you felt when you was in it as well. I've never been a great lover of the league side of it. Who's going to go through at the end of it. There might be one shock down the line, but it was like Arsenal were always going to get first or second in that group at the end of it. And I think like Spurs the same when they've been in it. It's not been that competitive as far as I'm concerned. Even worse in the Europa League, if I'll be honest, you can play your reserves, and we did on occasions, and I'm pretty sure Spurs will do a lot of changes in that as well. So I do think that something's got to change from that. I know now you get an extra 4 games. I don't really know how it's going to work. I was reading up about it the other day, and I think you need an A-level to work out what goes on and all that in there. But
I'm glad it's not just me. I read it. I was like, I don't understand that.
Lost by it at one point, So listen, you play 2 teams from pot 2 and 2 teams from pot 1, and so all I know is it's 4 extra games, and that means it's going to put a toll on the Premier League and the cups, as you say. So you're going to need a bigger squad and everything like that.
Yeah, it goes back to our point. Yeah, squad depth is so important.
It's going to be very, very important when you're playing 4 other games. So look, we'll see how it goes. I honestly believe this, that the European football for me starts when it's the last 16 in the knockout stages. It really does. I'm interested in it then. I'm interested in the Europa League when it's a knockout. But before that, it's a little bit stale. But I get it. It's financial reasons and all that money. So we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. For you, where do you think, a bit of early prediction here, where do you think both Arsenal and Spurs will finish next year? If you had to make a prediction on the spot. On the spot,
I'm going to say Arsenal will win it next year. I've got to say that, because we come so close this year, but Manchester City will start off as favourites, and rightly so. Tottenham, I think probably around about where they are now, 5th or 6th. I don't mean that horribly, because I think Chelsea. Well, I don't know, because Chelsea, I think Tottenham are in a better position than probably Aston Villa. And I like Aston Villa. And I think Chelsea, by the way, shot themselves in the foot by getting rid of Pochettino. I think that's a crazy decision. Aston Villa are going in the Champions League, so that might take a toll on them, like it did with Newcastle last year. I think Newcastle may come back without that. But as a lot of my Spurs mates said, that, you know, when you ain't got European football, I don't know how you feel about this, is that you had too many breaks in the season, and that may affect you. Like, you know, you play one game, then you got 3-week rest and whatever. Like, so that might affect Newcastle. So, and I don't know what's going to happen with you know, Tottenham in the Europa League, what they're going to do. But I think that, you know, they'd be definitely up there, challenging, like, you know, for top four without a doubt. Without a doubt.
You just had the really bad results in the Conference League and Europa League in the last kind of few years, like losing to NS Mora, Antwerp. There's one Dinamo Zagreb under Mourinho where first leg 2-0 up, we go away from home. And not being funny, I was watching it, but never really did I think that it was even going to be a contest, because saw some of the team left players on the bench, but goes into extra time, we lose that 3-0 and get knocked out. It was quite bad. But I think if we really prioritise the Europa League and just really, you don't say prioritise, but take it seriously, I don't think necessarily think we can win it. I think we can progress, quarter-final, semi-final, but we just don't want to see a weakened team when we think the job's done and the job's not done. Do you know what I mean? It feels just a bit disrespectful, and we've done it to Fulham in the League Cup. You get it if you're Man City and you're constantly winning trophies, but when you haven't got trophies to show for it, why are you're disrespecting the competition? That's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, there is that. But like when you're pushing for the title as you was in the beginning of the season, and like top four, you'd probably say like, oh, we'll take top four over the over the Carabao Cup, wouldn't you? I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'll say this. I've done the Europa League, done the Champions League. The Europa League's for an away fan, can't there? There's so many great places to go to that are off the chart a little bit. Like for a fan, it's great to go to. So, you know, there's this, when you go in the Champions League, it's all like the main city sort of clubs and all that. Like, it's not as great, you know what I mean? But like, you know, it's where everybody wants to be, isn't it? Like, you know, so yeah, but it'll be interesting what Spurs do in the Europa League. I think that Tottenham have got to. The one good thing about it from Tottenham's point of view is like where it has been in the past is there's no Champions League teams dropping down. You know, I remember we played in the Europa League and got to the final against Atletico Madrid. They had a poor run in the Champions League, and then in the January window they bought about 4 or 5 players, and they was a different team going into that. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So you haven't got to worry about that.
Absolutely. Before we get into the questions, because there's quite a few questions for me to ask you, Lee, what would your advice be to someone because there's lots of YouTubers out there. So any YouTubers that want to pursue YouTube and that kind of thing, content creation as a full-time job, what would be your advice to them to grow and take it up?
Be yourself. Don't try and be somebody else. Be yourself. I think that's vital. And I always say, I think that anybody that thinks it's easy, it's not. You have to graft. You have to graft. There is I know you say graft, that's a hard word about it, but there are times when you have to do evenings on, without getting paid for it, first and foremost, and not getting, and you just got to keep going and going and going, and just, if that's what you want to do, listen, it's a fantastic life. If you can get into it and earn a living out of it, it's a wonderful, wonderful life. So I'm very, very fortunate. But there's pressure on you. You've got to deliver certain things. But that would be my advice to that. Don't try and be something you're not. People will like you for what you are, and yeah, that's the best advice that I can give, really. But you got. It's like in anything. If you don't work hard, you're not going to get anywhere. So Oh, and another thing, I'll tell you what is another thing in this YouTube world. Being on time. There's so many people that are not on time, and it's
Tell me about
it. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But the more higher you go up in the industry, and then you're going in to do like work for TV companies and all that, if you've got that attitude and you're late and whatever, they bin you off. So, like, be professional. Be as professional as you possibly can.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a really good advice. So thank you, Lisa. Anyone listening that does want to take it up as a full-time job, there you go. But moving on to questions that people put forward this morning on X or Twitter, whatever you call it. So I'm going to go through some of them, Lee, bearing in mind that they are majority from Tottenham fans. So there's some interesting ones in here. Firstly, from Dan Tracy, who says, would you celebrate a Harry Kane goal for England now he plays for Bayern Munich?
Yes.
There you go. Nice simple answer.
There you go. Don't play the Spurs no more, like, you know what I mean? So,
love it.
Yeah. Listen, Harry Kane. It's very, very hard when, like, I'm very much Arsenal all through. Arsenal is the passion, everything there. And when he was playing for Spurs, he caused me a lot of pain and misery, like, and I didn't like him. I have to say that, like, you know what I mean? And that's the reasons why, you know what I mean? Tribal is very. I don't like any Spurs players. Do you remember there was it the World Cup a little while? There was bloody 5 of them playing in the team, like, you know what I mean? And I remember a couple of my mates going out to England Hotspur, and I said, right, I want them out. You know what I mean? Like, so it's I'm club over country all the time. It's a very, very funny thing. I'm very patriotic. Like rugby, cricket, I go and watch England play in rugby and cricket because I ain't got that tribal thing to it, like, you know. So it's very, very difficult watching England football because there is that tribalism, you know. So, and like with Harry Kane, he's the main goal scorer, so he's always going to score goals. It's not like when it was Sol Campbell at centre half. He might get 1 or 2 in his career, and whether Spurs fans are going to shit, but you know, more times than not, Harry Kane's going to score goals. So, listen, he's a fantastic footballer. He was a fantastic footballer at Spurs. And that's the reason why I don't like him.
I love the honesty. No, it's good to be honest. I think that Kane is a type of player. You get them as loads often that you really like them if you're yours, but if on someone else's team, you don't.
100%.
In a different way, maybe not as quality, but someone like Morpay, in terms of that kind of player, that kind of attitude. They're on your team. You love them. You absolutely love it. But if they're against you, you just don't want to know.
Listen, Teddy Sheringham played up front for England at once. So I've met Teddy on a few occasions, like, you know, and we was having a conversation about it, like, you know, and I said, well, I never cheered on any of your goals. And I won't say what he called me, but it started with C and ended in T, like, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, so, you know, it's a bit of banter and that, you know, and listen, you know, it's done there, isn't it? Harry Kane's not a Spurs player no more, so you know, he ain't going to hurt me like twice a season, like, you know.
No, exactly. Yeah, you've got a regular pain against your biggest rivals and Harry Kane as well. There we go. Next question is from Hotspur Reports, who said, "Who had a better season, Arsenal or Man United?" Obviously, this has come after Man United won a trophy. Very poor in the league, but they have a trophy to show for it.
Well, you can look at it 2 ways. You know, like they've won a trophy, it's fantastic and all that. Like, and then you can look at it on the other way: 14 defeats, bottom of the Champions League group. Going around the country, not knowing if you're going to win, lose, or draw, or get stuffed. We had it a few seasons ago and won when we won the cup. You didn't know where we was going to go. You know, getting stuffed by your rivals or whatever. Like, you know, from our point of view, beating Chelsea 5-0 at home, beating you guys away from home, beating Man City. I get it. It's about winning trophies as well, but you know, I would say that probably they've been more successful, but we've had the better season, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I know that when we won the FA Cup, I was jealous of Liverpool and Man City challenging for the title. So that's how I feel, like, you know. But you know, people will turn around. It's all about trophies, and it is. You know, it's a fantastic day out, but it's a day out. You know, like 38 times you go out in the league, and you know, when you're losing 14, 15 of those games and you know, being beaten, humbled at times, I don't know. And listen, when we won the FA Cup, we was being beaten by Burnley at home and Everton at home and teams like that. So it ain't great, but you know, the actual day is great and all that, like, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that. Shawsy says, what are your thoughts on Van der Ven and Romero, and are they close to Saliba and Gabriel?
They're decent centre halves. I wouldn't swap either one of them two for your two guys, if I'll be honest. I don't know if you'd swap either from your point of view, like, you know. So Romero, I'm not a lover of. I think he's accident waiting to happen. Van der Ven, I do like, if I'll be honest. But listen, you know, that's a partnership that's just started. Like Arsenal's has been 2 years now, like, you know. So
Yeah.
but I wouldn't. And people might say I'm biased and all that, but I think that it's the best centre half partnership in the Premier League in Saliba and Gabriel. I wouldn't swap them for the world.
No, I agree with that. If I put my bias, my Spurs hat to a side, I took it off, I would say that they've been the best centre-back partnership. And personally, I'm someone, I don't necessarily know about you, Lee, but I questioned Gabriel last season. Is it easy if Arsenal want to win the title? Can he do it? Saliba's, for me, felt like another level. I looked at Gabriel and thought he always kind of had a mistake in him. So they proved me wrong. I wouldn't swap them in terms of Van der Ven's pace really suits Spurs' system more than anything. Although I think Gabriel and Saliba are the better partner, and I think just someone like Van der Ven really suits the way that the Spurs play. But being honest with you, I think that Saliba is just another level. I think he's so impressive.
Yeah, but listen, I was more than impressed with Van der Ven when I see him at Tottenham that day, you know, live. First time I see him was at the Emirates. I thought he was very impressive that game, and he was very impressive in the game against us at White Hart Lane as well. So, listen, I get what the hype is about him. I really do. And as I say, he probably suits the system that Spurs are playing like. But you know, I wouldn't swap my two for anybody, and I mean anybody. I don't think there's anybody that I would swap them for.
Yeah, no worries. That's completely fine. I think they'd be well entitled to absolutely say that the season that they've had. Jack says, do you see Tottenham winning the league in the next decade?
No. And I'll be honest, it's going to. I think it's going to be. You know, 2-3 years ago, if you'd have asked me the same question about Arsenal, I'd have said no. And I still don't know if Arsenal win the league like in the next. You know what I mean? Because of what you're up against. You're up against Manchester City, like Chelsea, that have got money. And it's bloody difficult to win it, like, you know. So. I think Spurs have got to put in building blocks and all that. Like, you know, have they got the potential? Of course they have. Of course they have. You know, I've always said this. People like slag me off for it. Spurs are a massive club. They've always been a big club in my eyes, even since when I was growing up as a kid. I've always looked at Spurs as a big club. But winning the league is difficult.
It certainly is. Vectis Spurs says, what do you really think of Harry Kane? So we have touched on it, but will be your direct answer to Vectis.
What I think of him is horrible so-and-so. Dark arts is right up there with what I don't like about Harry Kane is he gives it out as this squeaky clean player, but he ain't. He's got the dark arts, but you need that up front. But first and foremost, an absolute quality footballer. I think, you know, Tottenham have done well to keep him through all of his prime, and not just.
He's very loyal though. He went through some really bad times. Very loyal, but very good goal scorer. Bet your house on him for a penalty, and also he's a good footballer. I think if you said to me who's the better player, Haaland or Kane, I'd go Harry Kane every day of the week. Goal scorer maybe Haaland, but all-round footballer, Harry Kane wins it, ends up for hands down. Yeah, I agree with that. Again, I do appreciate your honesty. Carl Freegard says, if you had to take one player out of Tottenham to play for Arsenal, who would it be and why?
Ngoy, left back. I think that it'd suit Arsenal.
Okay. Yeah. Would you look to a bit of divert? Would you look to move on Shevchenko, or do you think that you'd stick with him?
I'd stick with him. I don't know if he'd be a starter every week, but I remember that people very short memories in football. Going back to the game against Spurs 2 years ago when we the 2-0 win, he was absolutely outstanding that game. Pivotal to us winning that game. gets found out a little bit defensively, but also gives us a lot going forward. Like when you've got to break teams down a little bit, like, you know. And you look at Ngogi as well. I don't think he's the greatest defender in the world. I'll be honest. It's more of what he does as an attacking. Sometimes you have to leave floors a little bit. Like Glenn Hoddle wasn't the best defensive midfield player in the world, like by a long way, but he gives you so much more going in other ways. So sometimes you have to forget about a few of the weaknesses they've got and concentrate on what they're good at. And so yeah, I would keep Zinchenko.
Okay, thank you very much. Peter James, Spurs fan, says, thank you, Lee, for your time on Arsenal Fan TV. I've laughed so many times until my side hurts after many meltdowns, entertainment and full of humour. Do you think, how is Ty doing, firstly? And what do you make of some of his opinions? He said, I'm a bit worried about some of his opinions.
Well, yeah, like, listen, he is the most biased Arsenal fan that you ever listened to me. It's just absolutely all Arsenal. Arsenal. Doesn't see any good in any other team. And listen, there's lots of people like that in all fan bases that are like that, you know. I see it differently, you know. I'm very, very passionate and everything like that. But, you know, he is Arsenal through and through, like, you know. So from his trainers up to his underpants, you know what I mean? Like, it's all Arsenal. So, and that's how he is. He's never going to give any other team any credit. But he's good. He's a good, you know, a gentleman he is. So
I loved when he said the pitch was wet.
Yeah. Well,
he'd
blame anything other than the Arsenal team, like, you know. And sometimes, say, like, I remember having an argument once in Arsenal Spurs watch along, you know, back in the day when I said you got to give Tottenham credit; they were the better team, and he wouldn't do it, like, you know what I mean. He wouldn't do it. So there you go. So that's how he is.
There you go. Thank you very much. Josh says, how far do you think England can go in the Euros this summer under Gareth Southgate?
Well, I think England should win it. I think probably they won't win it because of Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, I couldn't put that better myself. I completely agree with that. I think that 8 years and, you know, not really, well, progressed, but not really won much. Morris says, if Arsenal don't go out and sign a world-class number 9, obviously we have touched on this, can you still win the league?
Yes, I believe that we can, because obviously we didn't have one this season, but we scored the most goals. Sometimes it's not always about that goal, but I do think in defining moments that get you over the line, and you probably know this more than most, that you're probably not playing well, and all of a sudden you've won 2-0 and you think, we won that game, and it's got up there 2 goals, Harry Kane, you know. So I think that there is a little bit in that, maybe like that we can, if we can get that. But listen, they're hard to find, you know what I mean? Like, you know, Harry Kane, for instance, is a £100 million player over 30 years of age. So if you're looking for a prime Harry Kane, so when he was 20, let's say Harry Kane was 25 now, you know what I mean, you're paying more than 100 million for him. So they're hard to find. So sometimes you have to develop them yourselves, like as you've done. And maybe Kai Havertz can be a little bit more lethal next season. He's certainly got his goal scoring ratio from January to the end of the season is very good. So I think it would help. I definitely think it would help.
Okay. And the last question we'll end with, which I think is a really good question from King Culver, who says, do you see similarities with the Tottenham project now under Ange Postecoglou that you did with the beginning under Arteta in terms of they implement the style?
Oh, that's a good question. No, because I think that they're different managers, different way of doing it. Do you know what? You might think that I'm silly when I say I think Spurs are in a better position than Arsenal were when Mikel took over. I know, like, I think that we had to do a lot of getting rid of a lot of players, which we had to get rid of, not sell. You know what I mean? I think that Tottenham are in a better position at this moment in time when I look at their squad. We had to go really deep, you know, cut out a lot of stuff and then go again. I think that Tottenham are on the right road, but sometimes pressure can lead to doing different things. I think that Spurs fan base is a little bit fragile, a little bit like ours in that respect.
Yeah. I'd agree.
And we went through. I don't think if Tottenham were to come 8th this season,
He'd be gone.
Yeah, I think that he would. I think that Tottenham are more ruthless than Arsenal in that point of view. Now, I don't mean if that's right or wrong, but I've always been a little bit that Tottenham have always had that little bit more of a mentality thing of not worrying about managers so much, been a bit ruthless.
But he hasn't got as far. Look at Pochettino and what he'd done with Spurs, and you get rid of it, you go for Mourinho and Conte. We just went backwards, really. We should have rebuilt after the Champions League final. Got behind the manager because it's evident to see that the team wasn't fantastic, but was glued together really well. That's like for me, it's the same thing as like now getting rid of Arteta because he couldn't quite get you over the line. It's also what you should do. He's got you so close, he improved you drastically.
Yeah, listen,
you back the manager. I thought
Pochettino,
Chelsea-esque,
Pochettino, I don't like him neither, but he built a team. I remember coming out. Do you remember the last time? I always say this to my Spurs mates tonight. I came out of the last game at White Hart Lane, Arsenal Spurs. We'd lost 2-0, and I walked out of there going, "Oh my God, what a good team they are! That's the best team I've seen in all my life at Tottenham." We could have been 4 or 5 nil that day. I think Petr Cech made some really good saves, if I remember right, if it was checking goal. But I looked at it and I thought, oh. And then you went to Wembley that season, didn't buy a player. And I thought, thank God for that, you know what I mean? Because I think if you'd have backed him that season, I think Tottenham would have been on to something special. Now, going forward and all that, the Champions League, I think that was probably a little bit of a downfall for him because there was a philosophy that he used of, players, earning the right to play in a team. And then obviously the cup final come along and it didn't pan out that way. And I think a few Spurs players lost a little bit of respect for him. In my opinion, the board should have backed Pochettino and said, right, the ones that have lost a little bit of respect for you, get rid of, and you start again. Because I think that, he was a good manager for Tottenham. And also,
it's the easy option. Like Chelsea did with Pochettino, it's the easy option. Rather than get rid of players. I think it's shocking, really.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'll be really honest when I say this. I don't like Tottenham because I've been brought up as an Arsenal fan from a young age. You don't like Tottenham. You know what I mean? It's part and parcel. Being an Arsenal fan, you don't like Tottenham. Being a Tottenham fan, you don't like Arsenal. It's sort of brought up to you, I've got family that are Spurs. You know what I mean? So it's a different thing. No one told me to hate Chelsea. No one told me, but I don't like the club. You know what I mean?
No,
I do not. No one sort of said, "Oh, you got to hate Chelsea, Lee. You got to hate Chelsea." Where as a youngster, you got to hate Arsenal, you got to hate Tottenham, I never had that ingrained into me. But I cannot stand what they are, what they've become, what they expect now. And for Pochettino to go there, I know a lot of Spurs fans don't like that, but at the end of the day, he's still got to work. He wants to coach. I thought they was if the season started in January, they'd have been 4th in the league now. I think he was building something there. And they've gone and shot themselves in the foot. With a bit of luck, they go and shoot their other foot off and all, you know what I mean? And go.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I thought he was on the right track for that, and he would have done all right for him, And if I'm Man United, I'm going out and getting Pochettino, if I'll be honest, I think he's a very, very good manager. And I only going on that past. Spurs were an unbelievable side that he built. There didn't build it on massive amounts of money, but when you look at that, he had Dele Alli firing, Kane, you had Ericsson in that side as well, and
we had 2 transfer windows back to back because of the new stadium that no money was spent.
Yeah,
really well
2 central defenders were magnificent for you.
I think Bayern should be interested for Vincent Kompany instead. I found that. Crazy.
Yeah, Walker and Rose were 2 good fullbacks as well,
Very good.
Yeah, so You know, I remember. Right, one of my family members turning around to me and saying, "Oh, you're a disgrace. You're a disgrace the way you treated Arsene Wenger. You know, we'd never do that down Spurs. We'd never do that down Spurs."
Wow.
And then when he when he got rid of Pochettino, I had him on it, like, you know what I mean, like, you know, I got a memory like an elephant. I went to him like, and he went, disgrace. I can't believe we've done it, like, you know. So there you go. So football's funny. Football's a funny old game.
Certainly is, especially at the moment with some of the stuff we see with manager activity. But I think that kind of wraps us up nicely for today's interview. So
really
thank you very much,
really
Lee.
enjoyed that, like, you know.
I really appreciate it. Where can people find you?
But I can't next season, you know.
No, same to you. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, like,
if they don't.
Lee Mark Judges on all socials, and obviously Lee Judges TV if you want to come over there. We do like North London podcast, so we're not anti Tottenham on there, like, you know. So it's pretty neutral when we do that as well, like, yeah. So that's it, really, like, yeah. And believe it or not, I've got a lot of Spurs fans that you know, I try and do everything to make your lives horrible, like, but a little story, a quick little story before I go, because I've got to go. But like, I was going into London on a Friday night, and I pulled up at the station. It was bloody packed. I said, "What's going on here?" Like, you know what I mean? And I went, "Oh no, Spurs are playing Manchester City in the FA Cup on the Friday night." And now, where I live in Cheshunt, like, the chat, you can imagine, oh, it's full of Spurs fans. I'm going, oh no, I can't go. I've got to get on the train. You know what I mean? I thought, oh, this is going to be, you know, I was a little bit worried, like, and I knocked myself like towards the end. As I'm going out there, someone's coming and said, "Oh, Lee, even though you're an Arsenal fan, can I have a photo?" and all that, like. And in the end, like, you know, people are coming up and going, "Oh, you're all right, you are, for an Arsenal fan." And I thought, oh, like, you know. So I was relieved that I was all right, like, you know what I mean. So yeah, like, I try to do everything to wind you guys up, but somewhere along the line, I'm not as hated as much as I thought I was in the Spurs community, like, you know. So there you go.
No, not at all. Very keen to get you on. I don't hate at all. I think that you're fantastic at what you do, and have provided some good entertainment, absolutely, over the years. But thank you to everyone who watched, who listened, who put their questions forward. Because if you're new to the channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. If you're listening on the podcast platform as well, don't forget to give us a follow and a 5-star review. Do follow Lee. And again, a massive thanks to Lee for doing this. Lee, this won't apply to you, so I'm very sorry. Come on, you Spurs. Let's hope Spurs finish above Arsenal. Can't see it.
You were working as a manager at Celtic Park when we met you. We picked you out, you shook us up and turned us around. You've turned us into something new. Ange Postecoglou, you know that we believe it when you say you're gonna change it. Ange Postecoglou, we're the mighty Tottenham and nobody's gonna stop them. Oh, we look so fine in blue and lily white. And then he said to me, I'm from a land down under. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh, Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou,